guys, welcome back to a new series. This is going to be reacting to a few channels. So we have Distraction Makers, and I've been watching these guys for a bit. They're very interesting. They're some game designers, and they're actually really interesting to listen to. So this is what I listen to on my commute to work, and I thought you guys might enjoy this, but I wanted to, share my thoughts about it. But yeah, I'll be reacting to it, so I haven't seen these videos. Some of them I have seen, and I definitely will react because I've heard about it before, and I got some stuff to say. But yeah, let's see what they got to say about why some Magic cards suck. Okay, so let's begin.
We're going to talk about why some cards suck.
Yeah.
And to move past the clickbaity title, why some cards seem like they suck.
Sure.
Look,
Coward.
I just want to set the record straight. All right. I mean, look, there's some cards that suck. Whatever. And I think that what we've come down to is that it tends to be that Magic designs its cards off of its psychographics.
Right. There are different reasons why different cards are made.
Yes. Which psychographics in a game, for those that
Psychographics for us in Magic is going to be the Timmy, the Spike, and the Johnny. But there's also two more. I think it's the Vorthos, and I think the other one, what is it? I can't remember well. Yeah, Vorthos. Yeah, those got 4 cards. There's another guy, and yeah, I'm really blanking on it. But yeah, what they mean is the kind of player that you are. Now, whenever we're talking about Commander, it's kind of weird because we can be multiple of them at the same time. There's a lot of Spikes that can be Timmys, and Spikes that can be Vorthos, Spikes that can be, I don't know, maybe the Johnnies. Some Johnnies can be Timmys, that kind of thing. I feel like in Commander, that kind of terminology doesn't really work. So everyone can be a Timmy if they like splashy stuff, and they can also be a Spike if they do it in turn 2, right? What can I say? So let's see where this guy goes. He's interesting. He's very interesting. So I wonder, because I don't know that he's a long-time Magic player, but the other guy is.
aren't familiar, I believe started back with the Bartle taxonomy. There could be some stuff that was played around with before that, but that's the most popular.
Well, I assume that that's probably influenced by sort of the idea of a target demographic.
Right.
And then when you expand upon that idea, you end up with different types of people that enjoy your product for different reasons.
Right. And I think, so Bartle's taxonomy came from MUDs, which, do you know what MUD stands for?
MUDs.
It's like
Never heard
online
of this.
RPG stuff, like
What
way
does
back
MUD
in the day.
stand for?
I know, right?
Multiple user dungeon.
Dungeon.
Is
Is
All right,
this
what's your
scripted?
guess?
Is this not
Multiple
scripted?
user
Multiple
dungeon.
Feels like
user
it's
dungeon?
not.
I don't think that's right.
Which is good.
I don't think that's
I
right.
rarely do any scripted
Okay,
stuff.
wait, what was your guess?
I know
Multiple
I should,
user
but
dungeon.
Multi-user dungeon.
rather react like this.
Hey, there we go.
Hey,
I completely
Also known
missed
as
it.
multi-user dimension. Never mind, you're wrong.
Multi-user
All right, so
dimension.
yeah,
What
Bartle.
else?
I don't know if he was the first guy that developed MUDs, or if he's just a MUDs
prominent.
developer.
We'll probably have to do a deep dive on MUD at some point, but
But he
that's
came
not
up-
what this video is.
He came up with these psychographics, and it was Achiever, Assassin, Explorer, and a Socializer, if I'm not
Okay.
mistaken. I think there's different names, sometimes Completionist instead
Let's
of
see,
Achiever,
let's
but
see.
those are...
Let's see. Acting as killer and achiever. In terms of players, killer versus socializer. Okay, so play to win versus play to have fun. That makes sense so far. World versus players, interaction. Explore the world versus socializing. Yeah, you could explore the game, or you could try to socialize way more. You could be playing for seeing how the game plays out and how your cards deal with others, how they deal amongst themselves, versus you don't care about what you're playing, you're just there for the experience. So it's very in-world versus out-of-world, kind of like the battlefield versus the table. They're technically the same thing, but we're talking about different things. And achievers on acting. a world could be like maybe the way you win. Achievers. This is interesting. Let's see where they go with this, because this is not the usual Magic like Timmy, Johnny, and Spike, which I'm
They're
thankful
generally
for.
the 4 archetypes. Mark Rosewater came onto the Magic team,
They're
and
done.
he was like, okay, we're going to make our own psychographics. And I think he's even said in maybe on his podcast or something that he maybe was familiar with Bartle's taxonomy, but that, and I like this distinction that he has between Magic's psychographics and Bartle's psychographics, which is that he said Bartle's taxonomy psychographics is all based on what players are doing in the game,
Oh,
but
interesting.
not how players are feeling about what they're doing in the game.
Okay. Yep.
And so
This is why Mark Rosewater is the best.
he's so good.
He's so good.
It's a great difference.
The hard and all.
Very good. And so the psychographics for Magic, initially the first 3 were Timmy, Tammy, Johnny, and Jenny, and then Spike. And then eventually added on were Melvin or Melanie and Vorthos. So Timmy.
Yep.
Timmy is big effects.
Timmy's like
Flashy stuff,
the
right?
described sort
Yeah.
of lovingly as the casual player, and it
Okay.
is someone who enjoys
Casual.
big creatures, big splashy effects, and generally plays the game for fun.
Right. Red-green players. So
Sometimes
then Johnny. Who's Johnny?
Johnny's Johnny combo player.
Johnny
Which-
combo player.
Yeah,
Okay.
and Johnny plays. They play the game for self-expression reasons. That's usually a big motivator for them. It's also like they like the way that cards interact with each other. It's combo
Big
player.
Johnny.
Okay. Gotcha.
Hi.
Spike, that's your competitive.
Tournament, most competitive. You're playing the game to win. You're playing the game to achieve
Right.
something.
And then Melvin, which we had not. We
Yeah,
didn't
we just
actually
read.
know
We just read
Melvin.
about Melvin. Yeah.
Yeah. Melvin seems to be someone that appreciates the underlying systems and mechanics of Magic. So design enthusiasts or appreciators.
I guess we're Melvins.
I guess we're Melvins. I had no idea.
Yeah.
And then there's Vorthos. And Vorthos is those
Never
that
heard about
appreciate
this, Melvin.
all the other aspects. It's the art, it's the aesthetics of Magic are the Vorthos players.
I think there's also a couple more, but I don't know what they are, and I don't know how to find them. So if we've missed any,
And what do
let
they
us
matter
know
to our game?
in the
They'll let us
comments.
know.
Yeah, because I'm pretty sure I remember Mark Rosewater mentioning a couple more, but I don't remember now.
So, but if we go off of those 5 there, I think designing cards for each individual player is important, and understanding
I disagree.
what card is going to have multiple uses. And I think that they've talked about this in the past too, that sometimes it's not actually as good to split a card. Because
a
sometimes
card.
you might have a card that like some Spike players like, but some Tammy players like. And the problem is sometimes that effect is like perfect and it fits both those player archetypes. And sometimes it feels like you're only getting half the excitement for any one of those players.
Yeah, I think Grizzlebrand might be a good example of this in that it's like a 7 mana. Is it 8 mana? I think
I think
there's
it's 8
There's like
mana.
a flavor miss here, which is
Yeah.
really funny. It's like
Spike, a
8 mana
Timmy,
for a
and a
7/7
Johnny
that you can
card.
pay 7 life to draw 7
Hey,
cards.
it's
It
also
costs 8,
got
which is hilarious.
Vorthos
I think
and
Mark
Melvin
Rosewater is
in it.
also like, what the why? That I think is a pretty good example of a card that might appeal to a Timmy or a Spike.
Yeah.
But probably more so focused towards Spike because Timmys don't really like paying 7 life for anything, even if it's drawing you 7 cards.
Right.
And maybe this is one of those split kind of situations, but I'm pretty sure Spike likes Grizzlebrand a lot.
Probably.
Yeah.
So
Don't we
Edgelord
all?
Timmys.
maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah,
they would
that's
probably
true.
like it.
That's true. So something that gets that we talk about a lot is that we see this trend towards data being almost deterministic in design theory, in that the idea is that what can be improved is what can be measured, and if you can't measure something, how do you know if you're improving it or not? And the Magic psychographics is a way to layer on top of design and say, hey, look, we need to be thinking about these things that can't necessarily be measured in the same way that optimization can. And so when we see cards that are just like,
The data. The data helps us optimize in ways that we can't see, basically. That's an interesting point. I think data is very driving. I'll give you an example. I used to play Yu-Gi-Oh when I was in, I think, middle school. There was no data back then. I remember very, very strong cards in my mind that whenever I look at other videos, they were very crappy. Then I remember when I went to high school, I completely disconnected from it. But I kept my cards. And then on college, I met some friends that actually like to play Yu-Gi-Oh! And I went there and I brought my good cards, and I was just, it was bad. It was so bad. They would beat me every single time so fast too. I could do nothing. I could almost not even play. And so it was kind of like, imagine someone goes like land pass, then the other player goes like play, beat you. Yeah, that's Yu-Gi-Oh! In a nutshell for a long time. It's the nature of the game. But the point is, the first person to go could do something or could not. It doesn't matter. Regardless, all my cards, all those splashy things that I had when I was like, whoa, I was doing this back then, I couldn't do them anymore. Another thing that was very interesting is that these cards, they lost value. Some of them didn't have story, some of them did. I like to build for flavor. Function was something that was secondary, and you couldn't find resources for any of the things. Like, there was rarely any story on Yu-Gi-Oh! There's probably the oldest thing that you can find Vorthosi for Yu-Gi-Oh! Is, aside from the anime, which very few cards that are actually good and that make a splash, and the way decks are built, almost nothing has to do with the anime. Almost nothing at all. I mean, think about Blue Eyes, Dark Magician, that's it, There's no such thing as like anime decks that actually make it into, like, that's not it at all. But, there's no lore experience. It's very difficult to actually make lore decks. And so, however, there are archetypes, and archetypes are basically a certain subset of monsters that are supposed to work, and that's akin to a tribal for us. So there would be cards that suck, and they're made like that on purpose. But then there would be really these tribes that they were really good. They were made to be broken. They were made to support the newest mechanic, or to be a bridge from older mechanics, or to bring three together, one at a time. There's cards that are like synchro only. There's cards that are, we got Xyz only. Then you have cards that have both synchro and Xyz. Then you have cards that have Link. Suddenly Link comes out, and now there's links for every single archetype. So those sets were actually support for that kind of archetype. And suddenly what you get is all of these things that are being pushed, and they still have no lore whatsoever. They're not designed for lore at all. And so what you get is this like jumble of things that are designed for different topics and purposes. And they're all splashy. They will appeal toward Timmy, but not toward Vorthos at all. I mean, you have almost nothing, and Vorthos is just like this person trying to explore what the world is, but there's no actual story behind the cards. There's no novels, like Magic has. And so what you get is you can only be either a Spike or a Timmy in Yu-Gi-Oh! It's very, very strange. So then when I start learning about the cards, there's no resources. There's no websites. There's no information. There's nothing. Very, very few deck databases. If you go to wiki, like Yu-Gi-Oh!pedia or wiki, things like that kind of thing, those were terrible. They were like outdated all the time. And yet Yu-Gi-Oh! Now moves in such a way that the community is very data driven, and it's like everyone knows the top decks, and it's like a big thing now, right? And yet there's no resource place where you look at recommendations. Now, look at it from Magic's point of view. You have EDH Rec for Commander, which is great. You have Commander Spellbook, which gives you every combo. EDH Rec has combos on its side. You got Moxfield for deck building, play testing. You got Tapped Out. You got so many resources. Even something like MTG Salvation, Scryfall, all these places where you could get high quality images. You could get information about how the cards interact, how they work, the errata. Even the company has some like, hey, gather.wizards. I don't know what. It's telling you all the time, okay, this is what's happening to the card. It's been errata this way. This is what it means. Let's simplify the text, because some cards are really old. And those resources, they work in such a way that they actually expand by having everyone share more thanks to the internet, which is something that hasn't been that long available to us, believe it or not. The internet really changes the way that the games are played. So Magic information comes from the desire to share, usually to share like exploration. For example, the combos. It's really exciting when you discover a new combo, and so then you upload it because you want to leave like that footprint, or maybe make a video. Hey guys, I found out this new combo. As soon as the card comes out, hey, this card can do this, that. I was the first one to discover it. That's kind of something that's natural. We all want to do that, but it shouldn't be the case that if we want to win, we share data. You hear a lot of old school Magic players talk about how no one knew anything back then. You would figure out if cards were banned or not with a magazine that was like outdated. And basically the comments on whether a card was good or bad, what it was for, players were not something that had like high-end or competitive play, because card games weren't a thing back then. Like Magic was the first one, so they had a few years before they could start up actually doing tournaments and getting to prices and things like that, and making it the stable thing that it is. The rules, the text, some words had to get some cleanup, and so it's thanks to information and the way we share it that we get that kind of thing. So there's sometimes that cards just, they're not out there for us, and that really changes the game a lot. But yeah, let's see where they're going with this. I just wanted to stop on information because we got to keep it in context on different games, and they talk about multiple games, not only about Magic, but sometimes they include Magic on it. Different games are going to express their data in different ways. For example, there's very few simulators on Magic. However, you can play them. They're just kind of tedious. But Yu-Gi-Oh has the best client, and yet a lot of people don't play Yu-Gi-Oh the way that they should. You got Pokemon. Pokemon is its whole another beast. I remember for the longest time I couldn't play Pokemon online other than a demo. Meanwhile, for more than 10 years, Yu-Gi-Oh has had YGO Pro. Before 1 and 2 were taken down, you had Dueling Book, Dueling Nexus. Like, there were so many ways that you could actually play Yu-Gi-Oh online and have high quality cards, good games, good animations. And Magic never had that. And Arena took a long while to start up. Okay, so resources, information, the way that we share stuff, the YouTubers and how they talk about cards themselves, that's something that's really, really new, and it's not at all very usual. So information and data is something strange. When you talk about commands on doing statistics, it's only like, hey, these guys made some video statistics and it's only on these channels for this date, these years. So what is data to us really if we don't have commander tournaments, we don't have lists, open list tournaments, we don't have metagaming on a closed loop, we never actually get that. And other games don't get that either. For example, Yu-Gi-Oh has an Edison format, and back then the top decks, when the Edison thing happened, people have metagamed it for about 8 years now, to the point that they're like, who even thought of playing what they played on those tournaments? Actually, Edison format, like you could metagame it so far ahead that you have sold the format to a few, like, dozen decks. Like, that's the only thing that's viable for Edison format, and yet people love playing that kind of thing, and other Time Wizard formats too. And the same thing happens for us if we were to do like pre-modern. Well, pre-modern has some decks that are going to be the best. If we were to do pre-pioneer, you know, those kind of formats on Magic, same thing. And for Commander, it's going to be the same situation. You have Commander, if you limit it by years, it's going to be terrible. But if you have an Eternal format, the data just keeps growing and growing and growing. There is no definitive way to get a better deck if we don't do it like through maybe simulations. But, you know, it's got to be thousands of games per deck. Per matchup, that kind of situation, because it's so many thousands of commanders and so many millions of cards. You know, it's terrible to, you know, what are you going to do with that? You know, it's really difficult. So, but let's see where they're going with the data, because data in Commander is very different from data in card games as a whole.
Like draft chaff, or maybe even cards that don't even see play in draft. It's not necessarily that they're always a mistake. Sometimes it might be that they are fulfilling a different role other than optimization. And this would be something like Colossal Dreadmaw. And it's kind of become a meme, but, you know, initially this was a card maybe to introduce players to the idea of big creatures. It's a new player, maybe it's a Timmy, and they're like, wow, I really like this awesome looking, you know, T-Rex, and it's big and powerful. And then later on, as they're moving through their optimization journey, they might find something that's even more powerful. But some of this, I think, also is framing that optimization, right? It's like if you start from most optimal, you have a much shorter distance to travel to the next thing that's most optimal. Where if you start from this is a storytelling technique too, by the way. Like when you're going to tell a story, you want your protagonist to start as far away from where they end up as possible. So without these cards that are, you know, not good, you're not giving players an opportunity to learn that those cards aren't good and then find better and better cards.
Okay.
Right. And
okay. And it's interesting how it ties in, because imagine you're new to Magic and you just open a box of cards that maybe your uncle played when he was little and he doesn't care about the cards anymore. He outgrew them. And then you just see that and you start reading cards and learning, and okay, and then you see something. You know what? I like Magic cards. And then I go to Walmart and I buy a Precon. And the Precon is actually way stronger than my uncle's shitty old moldy cards that are all beat up from when he played in the playground with his Black Lotus. That kind of thing, you know. It's like Black Lotus is great, but everything else in the deck, because he only pulled one and it's actually fake, I don't know. And then the Black Lotus is not going to be able to carry the rest of the draft chaff, like they're saying. And yet, if it's the only thing I have, then it's the only thing I can play with, right? And no one knows any better. On the other hand, I get that Precon and I shuffle up and play, and it's like an experience. It's designed for it, right? So it's like, wow, discovery. And now you bring me a Precon. I'm like, why would you ever buy a Precon? Buy singles, bro. It's only like 3 cards that are new and one of them is good. Like, why would you do that, right? Like, I already started on that journey. I remember when I thought, like, Cultivate, I wish there were 10 Cultivates, you know. And then it's like, well, there's a Cultivate and a Kodamas Reach. Whoa! And it's like, I can get 2 of these. And then my buddy goes like, there's actually another one called Nature's Lore. And I'm like, oh my god, you know, like, I was like, and it comes untapped. Oh, but it's only 1, but it's only 2 mana. Wow, I need this. And then he goes like, there's one actually called 3 Wishes. And I'm like, I'll search it up later. And I didn't. And a few months later, it was like, whoa, 3 visits is amazing. It's like Nature's Lore. And he's like, told you. And that's me now. I'm the guy that knows a lot of these cards. And now I'm unfazed by cards. But I guess it does make a lot of sense. Like, some cards are very bad because you're so much farther ahead in your journey of exploring, of discovering the formats, discovering the cards. Maybe Colossal Dreadmaw is a great pick for a bomb whenever you're drafting. It's like, wow, the wow factor's there. But if I get told, you have to run Colossal Dreadmaw in a mono green deck, I'm like, what am I gonna pick out to put the Dreadmaw in? I would never, right? It makes no sense whatsoever. But for standard, maybe it's a good card, but I don't think it is. And maybe when you're new to standard, you get that Dreadmaw, it's like, wow, this card's actually good, and you run it at 2, and that's like the most expensive card you have. And it's like, oh, okay. And then you get beat up by some, Questing Beast, for example. It's like, wait, what? I need a Questing Beast. And then you pick up a Questing Beast and you're like, actually, this could even be my commander. And people are like, Questing Beast is not a good commander at all. And then the guy goes, but Questing Beast is beating me in standard. It's gotta be so good. Like, this guy's so excited because he's at the beginning of the journey, whereas you got the other people that are always already past that journey. It's an interesting point. And notice how I'm such a Timmy, and I'm always thinking of green cards, Like, imagine Craterhoof. You give someone Craterhoof, and now everything else is just trash. It's just worthless. Because nothing is as good as Craterhoof. And then you see Pathbreaker Ibex. It's like, well, you know what? That card's actually like $20 or more. And they're like, why would this card ever be played? Well, maybe it's just great value, Craterhoof. And yeah, it is great value, Craterhoof. But why? Well, because you saw Craterhoof first, but when you see Pathbreaker, like I did before I even knew what Craterhoof was, I was like, this card's actually really good. Let me buy it. And I bought it for $4. I sold it for $20. See? So it's that discovery of the card. I took a long while searching for it. So that journey really is good. That's a very good point.
And I mean, I'm not sure of other card games being designed. I mostly look at Magic compared to all these other cards that are out there. But I know that Magic has always kind of had this bit of an excuse, like you mentioned, draft chaff, which I've never heard that term.
Really?
That makes sense.
Yeah.
It's a very common term.
And like, that's kind of that's a good use case for it, right? Is because you have this thing that sort of ends up blocking, any sort of good cards for you to try and get into your draft, and it's about optimizing and figuring out, okay, is that the better option in this particular case that I have? But a lot of these other card games that don't end up having any sort of a draft system in mind, most of the time they aren't designed with draft in mind, and there's like maybe some sort of like a fan-based draft mode made afterwards. But I think that you end up getting into the space that like everything ends up being designed for that optimum play pattern. There's probably a few wild cards thrown in there, but it does feel like, what's a good example? What's a really good example? Like Colossal Dreadmaw is like, okay, but
there's another card that most people probably don't know about anymore, which used to be the meme, which was Chimney Imp.
Chimney Imp?
Chimney Imp was like the meme terrible card.
What is Chimney Imp?
I mean, I'll bring you. We'll
Meme terrible
Chimney
card.
Imp.
What is Chimney Imp? I've never heard of this card.
This is the Timmy card?
No, it's not. I thought you were asking for an example of a really bad card.
Well, no, I said of a Timmy card.
Oh, oops.
Okay.
It's put into a graveyard from play. Target opponent puts a card from his or her hand
Chimney
on top of his or her library.
Card's terrible.
Yeah.
So no, the
Okay.
Devastator. Apex Devastator.
Apex Devastator.
Oh,
Perfect
okay.
Timmy card.
Okay.
Wow. What a difference.
Sorry, Dre.
But that card's also really good, right?
Dre loves it. It is very good.
It's a good card.
But it's very much a. It's very
not
much
a
a
good
like
card. It's a Timmy card. This card's unplayable.
bombastic, huge, colossal Dreadmaw.
Yeah. I feel like there's a pattern that I'm kind of
Or
noticing
Cascade is
happening
crazy.
with some games. I haven't played. I want to play some more, like the Dragon Ball Z card game. I still haven't played One Piece, but I mean, honestly, I'm looking at gameplay of One Piece, and it just kind of it's like same stuff in Digimon that I'm noticing. It's a lot of same design patterns and design philosophies. Design philosophies seem to be extending into that. which is that generally there seems to be a lot of stuff. It's not like that there aren't cards like Apex Devastator that have this big bombastic effect or something like that. Those cards have that effect, but it feels very much like the game is being designed in a way for players to experience that effect in this optimal way.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And a good example of that is like Digimon had a lot of you draw the top 5 cards of your deck, and if it's this card that's named this thing, then this big effect happens. Usually it's like
Hit or miss.
You
Miracle.
digivolve for free or something like that. And
Yeah,
then
it's kind of interesting because it's basically teaching players to play the maximum number of copies of that card in their deck,
Right.
without them coming to that conclusion on their own.
it kind of became, to me, it's a little bit designed by numbers. And it's like,
Right.
okay, you're just telling me the type of deck that you want me to play or that you want me
Well,
to
and
experience.
the Yu-Gi-Oh archetypes are probably another example of that, right?
Right, yeah.
Where you'll play a really powerful card that says like, well, if you have a Blue Eyes in play, Blue Eyes White, what's it called?
Blue Eyes
Dragon.
White Dragon.
Oh, right. Yeah, that guy. Yeah,
So
that guy in
disappointed.
play. Then you
Chaos
can
Max.
you may have this other
Had to be.
powerful effect.
Yeah.
Um,
And I
yeah.
think
Yeah,
that
let's talk about that for a bit.
I guess what bothers
And you have the whole archetype with Eyes of Blue. Literally, with Eyes of Blue is the archetype, and you have a lot of Blue Eyes cards with that guy. With that guy from before, it was the Horus, and there's Horus like level 4, 6, 8, 10. You had Black Horus. You got so many things, and you got the Nephthys too, Asians, Sacred Phoenix, and Phoenix of Nephthys, Guardian of Nephthys, blah blah, Servant of Nephthys. Like they make a really good job, and they're really nudging you, like hint, play this card in your deck. So yeah, that's information. That's not data driven, but it's the game is telling you this is what you should be doing. You know, this is what you're gonna try to be working with. So there's some cards that are kind of bad within archetypes, and there's some that are really, really good. So I don't know why they suck though. If they're pushed like that, if they're pushing each other, they're just saying they don't suck. So
me about that type of a design approach is because when you start to have something I look back fondly on being a very, very bad Yu-Gi-Oh player growing up.
Me too.
Or a bad Magic player growing up.
Me
Because
too.
I was a child and I
Right.
couldn't afford a bunch of cards.
growing up, you bad Magic player growing up. Sorry.
growing up. So what about
I'm
now?
platinum on
Wow.
Magic Arena.
That's pretty good.
Oh,
Thank
that means
you.
nothing.
All right, good job.
Aggro Red's doing very well at the start of a set.
I take it back. I take back everything I said.
So, I look back fondly on being a bad Magic player and a bad Yu-Gi-Oh player, and
Yeah.
I like remembering back on having like not all the cards that I wanted, and not being able to make the
Right.
most optimal deck, but having a lot of care or value that I attached and associated to specific cards without really caring if they're the best cards.
Right.
And I feel like you can kind of get that with stuff like Digimon. The problem I have with that is like if I end up having, if I open a pack and it's this really, really great Digimon card, and it has this big crazy effect, but it says it's clearly meant to be in an Agumon deck or whatever.
Right.
And I'd probably have Agumon, but let's say I don't have any of the other cards that synergize with that card.
Yep.
Like no matter how good I could make it's like I almost don't get to play it in that way. Colossal Dreadmaw, you get to play it in that way, right? Apex Devastator, you get to play it in that way,
It's
and that's
splashable.
fine. But it's sort of like even if you were to open this and play as a casual player, you can't even have the initial intended big bombastic effect of this card, which feels like it's kind of missing this psychographics design pattern, I guess, where it feels like you're trying to design for all of these super optimal tournament players to play in this way and have this big effect, but leaving behind all of these casual players that would probably be appreciating it, spreading the word essentially of this card game to other people.
Yeah.
And you're missing that effect from that.
So I do think there could be some.
I don't know what to think about that though, because it's not that I disagree, but let's talk CDH, right? You don't see Apex Devastator on any list. Apex Devastator was not created for CDH. It was not created for any other. Like it was literally in Commander Legends. It's not made for any other format. It's made for the people that are Timmies. So them talking about Apex like that, like, oh, this is made to be splashable in every single deck because it's going to receive play. That's not true. In fact, the better the green decks are, the less they'll have cards that are so expensive. Because even though green ramps really well, you want like multi-dimensional effects. You want maybe a mana sink that also buffs, that also has protection, that also has this and has like 3 evergreen abilities. I think Vorinclex, I'd rather have 3 different Vorinclexes than have Apex Devastator. Well, Apex Devastator technically counts as the other cards, which are also Vorinclexes and Zopendrel and maybe Craterhoof and Pathbreaker, like I've talked about before. And maybe you also get like a Selvala in it. And, you know, it's going to be a bombastic play no matter what, because it's not about it's a 10-10. It's about this card costs 10, but it's 4 cards. Like, this is the equivalent of a wheel or 2 wheels in one, you know, and also infinite mana and things like that. And just throw out your whole hand. Okay, but Apex Devastator is not a good card. It's a fun card. And it's made for casual play. And it's made for Timmies. So where are they going with this? There's no spike saying this is card, like, it's broken and it has to go everywhere. I don't really agree with this point.
You know, we actually talked about this in a previous video where there could be some utility in helping move players along that chain through the cards. But you're right, like, you shouldn't be doing that when your game first comes out, probably, right? Like, here's the decks, play them, you know,
right.
Like, why is this even why are you letting players customize decks at all at that point?
Right.
Yeah.
But I do think
that point is true. If you have a splashable card and then you add another one and another one and another, and at some point your deck becomes so cookie cutter, and if you only run the best cards on that availability, like maybe let's say it's green, I started naming a lot of cards. Eventually I run out of ideas. You know, there's thousands of green cards that could go in every single commander deck, and I think that's one of the biggest problems why people think like green gets so much love and green does everything. And it's exactly because of this, because green has so many splashable cards, and in commander green is a good support card, support color, but it's also a good standalone color, and it gets good support from other cards. If you got green white, you can go enchantment, tribal, or you could go counters, or you could go tokens, or you could go big stuff, or you could go wide, or you could go protection and removal. And like, there's so many ways you could do that. And the same thing happens with red. You could go aggro, you could go goading, you could go burn, you could go counters, tokens, you could go many tribes. Same with black. You got a lot of tribes. Now you got graveyard stuff. Now you got tutors. Now you got other things that are going to do other stuff, that are going to revive stuff. Green is good supporting and is very well supported by the other colors. Let's say you have it with blue. Now you got counter spells. Now you got bounce spells. Now you got all sorts of draw spells. Now you got all sorts of, like protection. And I mean, honestly, like, green is so well supported by everything. And then you make it like that because you make a lot of splashable cards. That's how green comes to be what it is. You don't have such a splashable amount of cards for white, for example. Smothering Tithe is very splashable. Swords of Plowshares is very splashable. You don't tend to think of maybe any kind of angel at all as a splashable card in every deck. There are no angels like that. There are no soldiers that are like, this has to go in every deck that can't have white. It has to. Think of Sun Titan. It doesn't really work like that. Think of Revelark and Karmic Guide. They don't really work like that. They're one of the best cards, and they combo off together, but they're really good in value on their own. And even the best cards in white, they're not that splashable unless you're talking about something like land tax. You're talking about something like, they started printing stuff like that on purpose, like Deep Gnome, Terramancer, Archaeomancer's Map. Like, they started so many things like that. and you can see there's a push for let's try to make white more splashable. And I think white just needs something splashable to make it on par with all the other colors. So draw splashable, tutors are splashable, reanimating is splashable. You got counters, tokens. It goes everywhere. Like that's why green is the way it is, and blue too. Now, let's say if white gets that treatment, white would need something like whenever X happens, gain life, or whenever gain life, X happens. And you could even do both. Black does it, green does it, blue does it. Why can't white? Why can't white be like whenever you draw a card, gain life, and whenever you gain life, draw a card? And that's basically a combo, but you can basically lose right there, make an infinite loop where you lose. You could have that done, but you could control it with some cards. Maybe you may draw a card. That could be good. Whenever you gain life, any amount of life, draw one card. And you can only do this 3 times per turn. You know, it doesn't have to be a lot. If you make X soldiers draw X cards, this effect only activates once per turn. Or draw cards equal to the greatest power amongst angels you control. You could do that kind of thing. And that's what would make white splashable. And it's really difficult. On the other hand, you make a card like Drannith Magistrate, immediately reaches to the top. It's like, wow, this card's terrible. We need to ban this. Or we need to, hate on the player that's doing that. Or immediate removal. That's like dies on the spot. And it's very hard. It's very hard to make a card that's balanced and still has that splashability. I don't think it's bad at all, though. I think white should have more of it, but every other color has it, and that's why they're all really well balanced, and they get or give each other a lot of support. So I don't know that it's bad, but when you compare it to other games, yeah, for sure, you don't want the spell that helps Blue Eyes a lot also be the spell that helps everything else, because now it's just a card that's a staple. Now it's going to become very hypocritical to me, because I believe that's a bad thing in Yu-Gi-Oh, but a good thing in Magic. Like Sol Ring, I think Sol Ring is an okay card. I don't think it should be banned. And whenever we have these bannings of like Mana Crypt and Jeweled Lotus, I'm like, I don't think they should have done it. But I'll be like, yeah, they should definitely not give you this. And then I'm on Magic like, oh, tutors are great. But then on Yu-Gi-Oh, I'm like, no, there shouldn't be like random tutors like Rhoda or just anything that just gets anything. That's terrible. This Bonfire card is setting the world ablaze on Yu-Gi-Oh right now, and because it's a tutor and it's not a famous name, that just the villain keeps changing faces, and the actual power behind the throne is this Bonfire card, because Rhoda was banned or limited for a long time, and Bonfire's still at 3. And it's terrible, and they're having a terrible time. If you don't know about Yu-Gi-Oh! Or Bonfire, it's a generic fire getter. It's literally a tutor for fire cards. And so, the format right now has a lot of really, really good fire cards that are like tier 0, 17-step combos that just end your game, and then on the next turn you're dead, but you haven't played anything and nothing can interact with you. And I have Omni Negates, which are basically counter spells for anything, and they're triggers. They're not even like a card I spend, and I could actually plus from countering you. That's how crazy Yu-Gi-Oh is right now. And like that problem is the archetype changes. That's why I say that the face changes on the villain. And yet the power of the behind the throne is that, hey, draw one card, generic. Every deck needs to have this card or these set of cards. It's terrible. It's really, really bad. And yet for Magic, I think that's pretty okay because it's limited to colors. But the reason why I have this dichotomy is because for Yu-Gi-Oh, it's a resource game. It's a card game where cards are the only resource. But for Magic, it's a resource game where cards are a resource, life is a resource, lands are a resource, and then you got tokens and treasures, and you got your planeswalkers that they actually count as life gain, and you got milling, but you got bouncing, and you got like there's so many resources, and knowledge is always going to be a good resource for both games. The fact that there is no other resource other than cards in Yu-Gi-Oh makes it so that tutors are very, very dangerous. And the other games, they can have more staples because those staple cards are kind of starters for you to play. They're not definitive. I'm going to win if I play this one card that I drew, and I'm going to get the most draw possible, so I win by drawing this one card. Yeah, that makes the deck very homogenized and the game very boring if it's solved. So yeah, they got a point. It's a pretty good point that you don't want it to be that generic, and yet I don't think Magic has gotten to that point, especially not Commander. So let's see what they mean by it, but they haven't talked only about Commander. That's pretty good. They always do, and they kind of hate that they're always talking about Commander. It's kind of funny, but we'll see where they go.
You know, part of where this comes down to for me is that, you know, in the world in which we live now, data is king, right? Like everything is data driven, everything is measured and optimized, and it is lacking kind of this human reason for doing things a lot of the time. And I think that we see, you know, art reflects life, life reflects art, and I think we see a lot of those a lot of that mentality reflected in the games that are being made. I mean, we can even see this in the way that Ubisoft developers reacted to Elden Ring, where they're like, "This is just wrong. Why did you do this?" When like there's a very clear emotional reason why so many of the things are in Elden Ring that seem wrong, right? And it's because they're tapping into what we're talking about. They're tapping into the fact that there's a lot of different motivations for playing things, and optimization is only one of them.
And I think that that's why it's a really important distinction between Bartle's taxonomy and between Mark Rosewater's player psychographics.
Yeah.
Because designing based off of what players are doing as opposed to how players are feeling, you cannot get measurements on psychographics.
Right. Like how are you supposed to measure?
The most you could do is send out a survey and just hope people answer it like appropriately. And like that's not
Timmy is a Timmy card is something that you can't really quantize at all. That's for sure. However, sometimes players' feelings matter. Sometimes they don't. I'll give you an example. I think if you're on your journey to discovering cards and you've been playing against your buddy that plays milling all the time, milling's broken. And the way that you feel about milling is a very unique experience. And then you ask any other Commander player, and milling is not only okay and not broken at all, it's actually super weak because you have to mill so many more cards for other players. And you may not even be able to if they got a Shuffle Titan, or if they really enjoy playing from the graveyard, you may just be feeling their strategy. Same thing happens with burn. Maybe you hate mono red wins, red deck wins, or mono red burn, or whatever, mono red aggro. Like you hate that kind of situation because you're just playing it. You really don't like goblins because goblins keep beating you, and that's your experience. And then you realize goblins aren't like a broken tribe. They're pretty fun, casual, funny. They're gimmicky. They're not really making a splash in any format. And yet your idea that, oh my God, they're terrible. Okay, like the metagame warps this idea that what you feel about cards, how you feel about the game, are something that's not really what everyone else feels like. And it doesn't really matter because eventually you won't feel like it. If you keep playing long enough, you're going to be exposed to other things. For example, you'll be exposed, if you look long enough, to cards that are actually very good against milling, and you can just disarm your opponent. And then, speaking of disarming, you start an arms race because now you can't do anything with mill. Are you going to now lose to me every game from now on, or are you going to one up? Because now you want to win, right? And if you want to beat me, then you gotta go more. But now you went more, I don't want to lose every game, so now I go more. And it's an arms race, and it's the power creep that we see on every set if we already know everything. But if we don't and we're on the journey, like they said, we're on the beginning instead of on the end. Let's do it the other way because I'm mirrored. On the beginning instead of on the end, what you're going to get in the beginning is going to be like, wow, I'm learning so many cards. This is the arms race. But when you're at the end, you see like, oh, these cards that just released, they're trash. And that's where I'm at. I haven't bought cards in like a year and a half because in my opinion, all the sets that have come out are absolutely terrible for a commander. But whenever I started, I was buying cards every week. Every single week. I would buy cards that were mind-blowingly amazing because, oh my god, it's not that those cards suck now, it's just that there's better options now whenever I'm farther ahead. So when they say you don't always like design for guys who want to optimize, you kind of do. It's just different levels of optimization. You're not gonna have every video game be played on the most competitive, try hard, speed running, solo, like leveling everything up, you know? You don't want to do that. Like no hitter is not a thing that many people are striving for, but a lot of people could. And the better you are at a game, the more likely it is that you find yourself in that position. If you are really, really good at a game, you're probably playing no hits. If you're really good at a game, you're probably speedrunning it compared to other people. And so skill is something that's inherently going to make you more competitive. And also this metagaming aspect is going to make you want to optimize more and more and more. And the more you're exposed to it, the more you do it, the more it is. So yeah. It's not that the cards suck, but cards aren't made to suck so that you can get a better playing experience. I think it's more like these cards, power creep exists because they need to keep selling product because of this natural optimization situation. And if people keep trying to optimize, why would they ever buy a new set? And that's where I'm at right now. If I want to optimize my commander decks, why would I ever buy? The reason for me is Duskmourn or Bloomburrow. Why am I buying anything from those sets? It doesn't make much sense. Like, not at all. No, not even the new the illusions. I wouldn't play that in any mono deck. They're pretty cool, but I don't wanna. And there's no reason to. The room cards in Duskmourn. I'm not buying rooms. No reason to buy rooms. They lock and unlock, and there's only one commander that locks and unlocks them back, so you can keep getting that effect. So it's just a one-off twice, which means it's half a card. So I have to spend twice as much mana or more on a card to get the benefits, and they don't all proc off of being open. It's just two separate cards. There's other cards that proc off of this one being open. So now it's kind of like a 3-card combo, and you're just spending multiple resources on every turn like that. There's no reason for me to buy those. So to me, those cards suck. So the reason for him saying cards suck, I don't think like the player needs to feel different, and I have to feel good about it. If we keep doing this arms race and this metagame power creep situation that comes both from our innate desire to be better than others, as well as their innate desire to make money off of us, I think those feelings are going to change. And just like life gain is not a problem for some people, it could be, but it's not a problem overall. Some people have problems with combo. Some people have problems with stacks. Some people have problems with the amount of overwhelming population in just all the boards, because I don't want to play board wipes because I don't want anything taken away from me. So a board wipe to me is mean. I feel like board wipes are bad for the game because the way I play, I wouldn't want a board wipe. If I go by that only, then I could never get exposed. I could never grow as a player. Whether I'm good or not stops mattering, because I feel like And sometimes you got to put your feelings aside to grow as a player, to be better in a game, and to enjoy a game more. What if the way I feel like is actually to have vanilla cards only because I feel like it's the cheapest cards and I feel good when I win with vanilla because I'm a tryhard that's going to win with vanillas only. And that's my personal gimmick. And then am I going to get upset because someone didn't play vanilla? And now I feel like that's not fair. See, that feeling doesn't matter. And it's stupid. It's really dumb when people want to impose their feelings on others. It's really dumb when I put myself like restraints and now I can't look to the sides and be like, why can't I see anything? Why can others see more than I can? Why can others actually run faster or be taller or weight less or more? You know, like, what about what I'm doing? What if I focus on how much I see and how to look for the good in it? Or maybe go to the gym and weight less and maybe run more and go faster and be stronger. See what I mean? Like, focus on myself, my growth. That's the kind of thing that matters. And as a player, you get more skill. You get exposed to more. You do more decks. You have more fun. You go out with friends more often. You hang out. You learn how to socialize. You learn how to politic. You learn how to... It's all about growth. So this idea that players and their feelings matter, it's very strange. I find it very, very strange because let's say I'm with a guy that's really off of the rest of the table, and that guy, like he's like, we're at a table, we're all together. If we came together, he's my buddy, they're gonna be like 2 versus 2. But if I'm the weird guy, I'm gonna get ganked, and I'm gonna get ganked the shit out of the game. If I'm part of the cool guys group, because we're all in on it and we know, and that guy's acting weird, we're gonna bunch up on him, you know, and that guy's gonna be pissed. And the way he feels doesn't matter to us. Now the way I feel matters to me, and maybe my friend is having a quarrel with that guy and I'm going to align with my friend to get rid of that guy, even though it's not convenient to me in any way in game, you know. Like, there's so many ways that feelings actually make no sense for the decision making in game, you know. I don't know. I don't think feelings matter that much in terms of psychographics and who am I to this game and how do I express myself more. I think that just happens naturally. I'm just a Timmy. I like splashy stuff. I think I am a big Spike player. I'm a big Johnny player. I'm a big Timmy player. Like, I'm all of them at once. I like having a combo that is very Rube Goldberg machine. I like having all the stations in my colorless deck, even though it's a 4-card combo. That's stupid. But I also like doing Consultation Thoracle on turn 1. I really, really enjoy that. We can now. It's going to be on turn 2 onwards, right? But I really find that really fun. And the fact that I can, you know what, I'm going to try to get it the earliest that I can and you know, race to the first place and do that kind of thing. But that doesn't mean I also don't, you know, enjoy that. That doesn't mean I can't enjoy the Apex Devastator and get that 2 Vorinclexes and Soap and Drill and also Selvala, and I'm gonna get them all together, and Selvala comes at the end, so it casts first, so now the other 3 get me to draw a card and now have mana, because right, I got a 10/10 and now I can tap my Selvala and give it like mana and pay 1, get 10, and now I drew 3 cards for the other 2, and now it's like boom, 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 and one of the Vorinclexes actually taps my lands twice now. So I have draw, I have mana, I have creatures in the board. They're all menaces individually. I mean, life is good, you know? I mean, I like that kind of thing. That's the Timmy thing. That's not Spike. That's not Johnny. But I really, really enjoy whenever I play my shrines all together. Just like, they don't combo, they're just full value. I'm not spiking out. And whenever I am comboing, it's not necessarily a Spike thing. It's just a Johnny thing, you know? I could do it with shrines. I could do it with stations. I could do it with slivers. I do that, or Eldrazi. I mean, there's a little bit of everything in all of us. So I don't know that the feelings have anything to do with it. We're all a part of, like, we got percentages of these 3 guys. And they don't make up 100. Like, I can be 60% all of them. I can be 20% all of them and be real Vorthosy, and that percentage is not added together. I don't know. I think they got a point, but it's not necessarily why cards have to suck. For those players who experience or feel or express whatever, I think it's because naturally, due to relativity, cards are bad because you know good cards, or cards are good because you don't know better. And as you know better, you suddenly realize those cards are now like kind of bad because contextually they're the worst. Let's say you play Pauper. A lot of these cards are gone. They're gone because in Pauper you only play like commons and uncommons, and you can't really play rares. Now, my decks in Commander are all mythic and rare. It's very strange that I have a common card. So does that mean all those cards are bad? It's not that they're bad. I'm not even thinking about them. So I'm just looking at how good Llanowar Elves is, you know? I'm just thinking about how good that Arbor Elf is. And that's like one of the best. Sopendrel, a mythic? Why would I play a mythic? I can't even play a mythic. Why am I thinking about a mythic if I play Pauper only? See what I mean? Like, just you knowing and limiting yourself in your format is plenty. So, all in all, I don't think that's why cards suck. I think hindsight, they suck after you know more. But Apex Devastator is pretty amazing as a card. It's purely a Timmy card. It's not a great card. And yet, it sees play. It's kind of valuable, actually. So, let's see where they go with it.
A good way of getting data.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I think
but
data has
with
nothing to
Bartle's
do with it in this
taxonomy,
case.
you're able to actually have a lot of data on whatever game that you're designing,
Right.
and you're able to track and say, okay, well, players are accomplishing these things. They're doing these tasks.
Excitement
They're killing things.
is always
and
going to
they're-
move people.
Because
So
they're
you
still
making
killing things,
splashy
they must be
things
enjoying it.
is good.
The problem is that
You making it
That's-
splashable
that
effects
assumption-
is
yeah.
good.
you cannot determine why someone is doing something. You don't get that necessarily. Well, actually, no. Psychographics are designed in a way, first and foremost, with the intention of why you would be doing something,
Right.
Yeah.
and why you would be enjoying something. Whereas Bartle's taxonomy starts at the beginning of this sort of almost extrinsic, more than likely extrinsic motivation to do this thing.
Right.
You show a carrot on a
Interesting.
stick to someone, and they go, "I want that carrot."
Well, and that's a way to also manipulate the data, right? So if
Yeah.
the goal is to have data that backs up, okay, well, we're trying to serve these player archetypes, which are players who, what were the
Social, achiever, assassin, and explorer.
right? Okay, so we could look at like what are success metrics to see if we're hitting those players. We have, sorry, one more time.
Social, achiever, assassin, and explorer.
Well, we can measure those things by how much time those player archetypes are spending doing the things that we've put in the game that we think fulfill those roles.
Yeah.
But all you're measuring is how much time they're spending. You're not measuring whether or not they're actually enjoying themselves.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so you can,
That's true.
skewing the data by creating systems that sort of trap players in these scenarios that you're like, oh, look, we've successfully achieved, pleasing an explorer archetype because we can see that this percentage of our player base is spending a lot of time exploring.
Right.
But like, why are they doing that? Did you make a system that's a carrot on a stick that it's like, okay, well, if you go to these places and you fly around the world or whatever you're doing and you achieve the things, are they doing it because they want to, or are they doing it because you have motivated them with some kind of a reward?
Right. And I think that data on the other side, on psychographics, the magic psychographics, is like, I don't even know how you track that, right? Like I said, other than having
can't.
some sort of a survey.
Player
But
survey, but
Yeah.
if you're designing with player motivations in mind already, their intrinsic motivations as opposed to their outwards actions. And I think what's funny about that is, like, I think technically any player would probably enjoy socializing. They'd probably enjoy killing, exploring, or achieving something.
Yeah.
But I think that you can achieve and explore as a spike player, or you could achieve and explore
Yes.
as a Timmy player.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that that's what's really interesting is that you can find ways that all of Magic's psychographics can fit into each quadrant.
Right.
And immediately you can start to see what type of a play pattern that player might be doing to enjoy that aspect.
Right.
Yep.
Right. Look, what are online trolls if not just Spike players socializing?
Literally. What can I say? They rounded it off in a really good manner right there. I think while I disagree only on the fact that it's not that cards are made for that intention. You're not making a bad card so that you know the difference between bad and good. They're not really making a card that's shitty so that you cannot play it. I don't think that sells product. I think it's more so like, if we want to create a good draft experience, then we need to include cards of all sorts of levels. Because if everything is so good that it draws and taps for mana and has double strike and has haste and has flying, then it's really boring. Like, imagine playing with no draw and with no ramp and also no creatures. What are you doing? Like, how are you winning? Are you just gonna keep drawing cards until it's nothing? Because if you both draw the same amount of cards, no matter how fast it is or slow, draw is now not part of the fun. It's so far gone, right? Now, if you play creatures only, and you only have 1/1s, and then the 2/2 dominates, it's gonna be a race to who gets to the 2/2 first. And if you have the only flyers, then flying isn't a thing. If you have only ramp spells, if everything could tap for mana, it doesn't matter whether you draw a land or not. Like, you got mana, so mana and wanting to get mana is not a thing. So I think in relativity, cards can't do everything so that you can have multiple functions. And whenever you have that in a draft environment, that's what you do. And why does draft matter? I don't really know. Not gonna lie, I don't really know. I think Yu-Gi-Oh and Pokemon are completely undraftable. They're not draftable at all. They make no sense in draft. But Magic, because Wizards has this idea that packs are made for people to draft them, they have this really warped idea that people are in it for that only. That they think draft is the way to play Magic, that this is such a good thing, and many people enjoy it. I'm not saying they don't, but this idea that draft is the way, I've heard Mark Rosewater say it so many times. Like the draft experience is something we need to save, we need to protect, we need to make better. You know, we got the explosions and the fireworks kind of slot here, and we got the ooh and the wow and the hints of this and that. It's like, what are they talking about? I open a pack and I look at the mythic one. I'm like, did I get something with value? And there's other people that are like, I actually never buy packs. That's me. I just I get the mythic one for like $5 whenever it's low, or 20 or 100. I don't care. Whenever I decide to buy my card, it's me buying it, right? It's my choice, and I don't get to open that pack and be like, oh my god, I love drafting, oh my god, I hate drafting because I have to give it to the person on the side. You know, not everyone has that experience. Commander is the most played format, and it's kind of opposite to draft. You don't get to draft, and as a Commander player, you don't need to ever draft to be a good Commander player. You don't need to have ever drafted to say that you can enjoy Commander. And Commander has become the most played, the most fun way and the most common way to play Magic. And yet Wizards of the Coast thinks that they have to make certain cards, so there's certain slots in packs, certain packs, by the way, because then you have Double Masters. How are you going to draft with that? You have Commander Masters or Commander Legends, which was a draftable Commander set. No one drafted that. We tried, but they didn't really keep up with that. They didn't want to. So Drafting is a thing that is very much, it's kind of like a bootstrap paradox. They make it for that, and then because the product sells, they're like, oh, the product sold, we need to do more, and they keep doing more. And because they don't do anything different, they can't really compare. If you make every set thinking about draft, you're not going to get any measurement that's non-draft that tells you whether draft is good or bad. The more that you're looking for something when you're designing, like, the less that you can get info out of it on the feedback, because you're trying to get that positive feedback. So everything that's negative could be misleading. Everything that's positive could be misleading. It could be you doing a feedback loop. Okay. And so I think that's the biggest problem for Commander. For Commander and Magic, in terms of Commander, I think the way they make cards, and cards have to be bad because draft. Because you can't have all the cards be good. Because if you did that, you're going to express all the different abilities that Standard has. And you're going to have white weenies and red aggro and, blue-white flyers. They're going to overpower, no matter what, they're going to overpower whichever draft environment. I mean, it's such a safe strategy to just do Azorius flyers in every single draft environment that you could find yourself. You do it over and over and over, it's going to be good. Same thing happened to me with Apex Devastator. I chose to play Cascade on Commander Legends. I drafted it for about 10 hours total, 3 or 4 drafts. And I won every single game because I kept going for Cascade. It didn't matter if I did Cascade with the 5 colors. It didn't matter if I did Cascade with 3 colors with the Averna. It didn't matter if I did it with Emoti. It didn't matter if I had mono Cascade cards or not. It was just so splashable that it wasn't a good idea. And the reason isn't that everything was splashable. It's just that Cascade was so much better. And if you make everything do everything, you're gonna see those differences. And Cascade, if you have all the cards be like the utmost that they can, you're gonna have the Cascade draw card be better than the regular draw card. You're gonna have the trample haste be better than the card that has trample and the card that has haste. So you have to have a very varied kind of card pool, where you have some vanillas, where you have some evergreen only, where you have triggers for ETB, for LTB, die triggers, that kind of thing. And you also have triggers for casting, not just ETB. And you also have counters and removal and exile. Like, you need those. And like, that's for a good draft environment. But in theory, you don't need to keep reprinting Colossal Dreadmaw. You don't need to make a card again. You don't need to reprint at all, because maybe we all want new cards. They wouldn't know because they keep making draft stuff. They keep making things with the idea in mind that people want to draft. Therefore, we need to give them a good draft environment. And it sounds kind of kooky whenever they say that. It's like crazy. Like, oh, we need to do the perfect drafting experience. It's like, I could care less about draft. Now, you can clearly see I'm biased, but I think a lot more players play Commander than non-Commander at this point. That we can tell you it's not really about the draft at all. It's not really about Modern or Standard. It used to be very important, but you don't see people be like, Cube is the utmost way to play. No, you see everyone say, oh, I play this in Commander. I play that in Commander. I like Pioneer a lot, and I like that my Commander decks, I can put my Modern cards in, because Pioneer doesn't allow these cards, and I played Modern before. That kind of thing is very, very common. It's like, well, I used to play Standard when I was in college, and now, eventually turned into Modern, and never even thought of buying new cards. So now I just play Modern all the time. But my friends play Commander, so I got like Pioneer stuff, because it's okay. I decided to play Standard, and Pioneer is like the in between. So all my cards either went to Modern or Pioneer or both, and whatever didn't is in my Commander deck. You hear a lot of stories like that, and that's very early in the journey compared to us on the spectrum where everything seems like trash, and maybe you're not that person, maybe you're along the way, maybe you're at the beginning, at the end, but I don't think cards are made so you could experience that. I think you experience that after the cards are made, depending on your knowledge. So they got that point where I differentiate, but they got really good other points, and I love these guys. You see, they ended on such a good note. I'm disagreeing, but I enjoyed the video so much. I'm not raged out, roided out, like, oh my god, they're so dumb for not thinking the way I think. No, I really like their content. I like how relaxed it is. The socks thing is funny. They're just there in the living room, kind of like the professor does. But they're just chill. You can tell it's at their house. Sometimes the cat jumps in. It's pretty cool. So these guys, they got a lot of insight, and even if you agree or disagree with them, it's really enjoyable to watch. Honestly, the only thing I don't like about their channel is that I never know when their video starts or ends, because they started midway through the conversation, and because they cut like midway through a sentence at the end, and they don't tell you, like, you don't know, you don't hear an intro before or after on the ends of the video. So sometimes whenever I listen to something back to back, I'm like, oh, the video ended. Oh, this is another topic. Wait, I've watched 3 videos in a row. I thought this was just one. Oh, okay, yeah. This is the only thing I gotta say. Like, there's no critique on their part yet. They got great picture quality, great audio quality. They got great sense of humor. So I think I am going to keep watching other videos they got. That info management seems like a cool one. So maybe I'll record that one right after this. So I'll see you on the next one. Don't forget to, comment about that. What do you think about these guys? So what do you think about what they said? And maybe am I wrong? Do you disagree with me? Do you disagree with them? Do you agree with both of us? And tell me your experience in the comments. Also, like, share, subscribe, and follow for more, okay? I'll see you on the next one. Peace out.